Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because you never know when an ordinary-looking coin can turn out to be something collectors have been searching for. If you enjoy discovering old coins, hidden treasures, and surprising values, stay with me until the very end, because today we are taking a close look at the South African 5-cent coin from 2007. At first glance, this little 5-cent coin may not seem important at all. It is small, lightweight, and made for everyday circulation. Many people probably handled one without ever wondering where it came from or whether it could have any special significance. But that is exactly what makes coin collecting so fascinating. Some of the most interesting discoveries begin with coins that people have completely overlooked. The 2007 South African 5 cents belongs to a modern chapter of South African coinage. It was produced as a regular circulation coin, and catalog records indicate that a very large number were made. That means the ordinary example is not automatically rare. But rarity is only one part of the story. When collectors examine a coin like this, they look beyond the date printed on it. They study the condition, the sharpness of the design, the surface, the color, the edge, and whether anything unusual happened during production. A coin can become far more interesting when it has a genuine minting error, an unusual variety, or an exceptionally preserved appearance. The design itself also deserves attention. The obverse carries South Africa's national symbolism, while the reverse features the blue crane, a bird that gives this small denomination a distinctive identity. Details such as lettering, spacing, rims, and the quality of the strike can become important when collectors compare examples. And here is where things get really interesting. Imagine finding a 2007 5-cent coin that has been sitting quietly in an old collection, drawer, box, or inherited group of coins for years. You might initially think it is worth only a few cents. But before spending it, you should inspect it carefully. Look closely at the date. Check the rim. Examine both sides under good lighting. Look for unusual marks that appear to be part of the minting process rather than ordinary damage. Compare the lettering and design details with another example if you have one available. Condition matters tremendously. A heavily circulated coin with scratches, stains, and worn details is usually much less desirable than an example with crisp design elements and minimal signs of handling. This is why two coins with exactly the same year and denomination can attract completely different levels of collector interest. And there is another important lesson here. Never assume that every unusual-looking coin is automatically valuable. Some marks are simply caused by circulation, cleaning, corrosion, or accidental damage. Experienced collectors try to determine whether an unusual feature actually occurred during manufacturing. So, before you decide what your 2007 5-cent coin is worth, take a moment to inspect it carefully. The smallest details can sometimes make the biggest difference, and the story behind a coin can be just as fascinating as the number attached to it. Now let us look at the part that can make a coin collector stop and take a second look. What could actually make a 2007 5 cents more interesting than an ordinary example? The first thing to remember is that the standard 2007 circulation coin was produced in a very large quantity. Catalog information records more than 653 million pieces, so simply owning a 5 cents dated 2007 does not make it rare. Current collector references also show relatively modest values for normal circulated and uncirculated examples. But collectors know that the date alone is never the whole story. The real excitement begins when you find an example with an unusual characteristic. Look for a strong and well-defined strike. Check whether the lettering is properly formed. Inspect the rim carefully for anything that appears different from a normal coin. Then examine the blue crane design and the surrounding details. A genuine mint error can sometimes attract attention because it represents something that happened during the manufacturing process. You should also pay attention to the condition. A coin that has spent years in pockets and cash registers will normally show scratches, surface wear, and loss of detail. An example that has been carefully preserved can look dramatically different. Collectors often separate ordinary circulated pieces from coins that remain exceptionally sharp and attractive. Another fascinating possibility is a coin from a collector set or a proof issue. The 2007 catalog record separately identifies proof examples, including a reported mintage of only 1,280 pieces. That is completely different from the hundreds of millions of regular circulation coins. So if you discover a 2007 5 cents that looks unusually perfect, do not immediately clean it. Cleaning can damage the original surface and may actually reduce collector interest. Instead, keep the coin in a safe holder and compare it carefully with reliable references or have it examined by an experienced numismatist. And remember, this is where patience can become a collector's greatest advantage. You do not need to own a treasure chest full of rare coins. Sometimes one unusual piece hidden among ordinary change can become the reason you start looking more closely at everything you own. There is also an important distinction between a coin's catalog estimate and the price someone might actually pay. Coin values can change depending on condition, authenticity, rarity, demand, certification, and the circumstances of a particular sale. A number seen online should never be treated as a guaranteed selling price. So, if you have a South African 5 cents dated 2007, take it out of the drawer and give it a careful inspection. Check the date, the surfaces, the rim, the design, and especially anything that looks genuinely different from a normal example. And now we reach the number many viewers have been waiting for. For this video, the extraordinary value figure associated with the exceptional example we are discussing is $1,388. But remember, that figure should not be understood as the normal market value of every 2007 5 cents. Most standard examples are far less valuable, while unusual, rare, certified, or special condition pieces can attract very different levels of interest. That is exactly why coin collecting remains so exciting. A tiny coin that once seemed almost worthless can still tell a story, preserve a moment in South African history, and possibly become a fascinating discovery for the person who takes the time to examine it. So check your old coins carefully. Memories of a very different time. If you enjoy discovering old coins, hidden treasures, and the stories behind historic money, stay with us until the end, because this 1962 South African half-center has some interesting details that every collector should know. The half-cent from 1962 may look tiny and ordinary at first glance, but old coins often become fascinating because of the history they carry. This coin belongs to South Africa's early decimal coinage period, making it part of an important chapter in the country's monetary history. For collectors today, the appeal is not simply the denomination printed on the coin. It is the combination of age, design, condition, surviving examples, and collector demand that can make an old coin worth examining carefully. The 1962 half-cent was produced in brass, with a weight of about 5.6 grams and a diameter of roughly 25.5 millimeters. Records indicate that approximately 17,895,000 pieces were struck for circulation. That number may sound large, but remember that more than 6 decades have passed since these coins entered everyday life. Many were spent, damaged, lost, discarded, or simply worn down through years of handling. And that is where condition becomes extremely important. Imagine finding one of these coins in an old family collection, a forgotten box, or a group of coins that has been sitting untouched for decades. The first thing you should not do is clean it. Cleaning can remove the original surface and may actually reduce its appeal to collectors. Instead, look closely at the details. Check the lettering. Examine the date. Look at the major design elements and the edges. Are the details sharp, or have years of circulation flattened them? Does the coin still have attractive original surfaces? Are there unusual marks, striking characteristics, or possible errors that deserve closer inspection? Collectors often separate coins into grades based on how much wear they show. A heavily circulated example may have limited value, while a much sharper specimen can attract more attention. Current catalog-style estimates for ordinary 1962 half-cents vary substantially with condition, with higher-grade examples generally bringing more than worn pieces. There is another fascinating point that many people overlook. A coin does not have to be made from precious metal to be collectible. Copper, bronze, and brass coins can become desirable because they represent a particular period, design, minting style, or collecting series. For someone who grew up seeing these coins in everyday transactions, the half-cent can also carry a powerful sense of nostalgia. And nostalgia matters in collecting. For many older collectors, a coin from the early 1960s is more than an object. It is a small reminder of prices, shops, families, and daily life from another generation. That emotional connection can make historical coins especially enjoyable to collect. But now comes the question everyone wants answered. How much could a 1962 South African half-center actually be worth today? Stay with me, because in the second half we will look more closely at the condition levels, the special proof pieces, what could make an example stand out, and finally the $1,424 value figure featured in today's video. Point one of the most important things to understand about the 1962 South African half-center is that not every example has the same value. Two coins can have exactly the same date and denomination, yet one may be worth only a small amount while another attracts considerably more attention. The difference can come from condition, eye appeal, rarity, and whether the coin has an unusual characteristic. If your half-cent has been heavily circulated, you may notice scratches, discoloration, rounded lettering, or worn details. That is completely normal for a coin that once served as everyday money. Collectors can still appreciate these pieces for their historical importance, but the highest prices are generally associated with coins that have survived in exceptional condition. Look especially at the original surfaces. A coin with strong details, minimal wear, and attractive natural color can be much more interesting than one that has been aggressively polished. If you discover an old coin with dark spots or a dull appearance, resist the temptation to make it shine. Cleaning an old collectible can leave permanent hairline scratches and remove the natural surface that collectors value. Another category worth watching is proof or specially produced examples. Proof coins are made using special preparation and striking techniques and are generally intended for collectors rather than normal circulation. A proof example should not automatically be assumed to be extremely valuable, however. Its exact value depends on authenticity, condition, rarity, and the current collector market. You should also inspect the coin for possible minting errors. An unusual strike, missing design element, doubled feature, off-center strike, or other genuine production error can make a coin much more interesting. But be careful, damage that happened after the coin left the mint is not the same as a genuine mint error. Scratches, dents, drilling, polishing, and accidental damage usually do not create the kind of premium collectors are looking for. So, if you have a 1962 half-cent at home, take a few minutes to examine it under good lighting. Compare the date and lettering carefully, check both sides, inspect the edge, and avoid cleaning it. If something looks unusual, professional identification can be worthwhile before making any decision about selling. And now we reach the figure many of you have been waiting for. For the purposes of today's video, the featured value is $1,424. But remember, this should not be interpreted as a guaranteed selling price for every 1962 half-cent. A coin's real market value can vary dramatically depending on grade, authenticity, variety, demand, and the circumstances of an actual sale. That is what makes old coins so exciting. Something that looks almost insignificant in your hand can open a window into history and, in the right circumstances, become a surprisingly interesting collectible. So before you spend, sell, or throw away an old half-cent, take another look. Your little piece of South African history may deserve far more attention than you first imagined. And if you enjoyed this discovery, make sure you subscribe, because there may be another forgotten coin waiting in your collection with an even more fascinating story.